these measures were brought into place.
Is it likely that somebody within the Parliament is going to sponsor such an amendment?
I think there's a recognition on both sides of politics that it's important not to leave people who are in hazardous occupations without appropriate life insurance. And the possibility of looking at alternative ways of doing this, I think, are being explored. The challenge is that we need to make sure that in our bid to, prevent insurance premiums eroding low balances, we don't expose. The other problem we have is if we carve out a large number of young people from the insurance pool, the pricing, the premium on the remaining people will have to go up quite significantly.
How significantly would that be?
The estimates that we've seen from various actuarial analysis suggest it could be anywhere from 15 to 25%. So as you carve out young, healthy people from a risk pool, the residual pool of over 25 gets repriced. And so the savings that that under 25-year-old makes by being carved out may actually be eroded quite quickly when they come back in as a result of the higher premiums they'll pay when they come back in.
So have your members worked out how much revenue will be foregone if those changes are made along the lines of consolidating of accounts and doing away with some fees? Have you done that calculation?
I think the important thing for the sector is that we want people to be engaged with their superannuation and to be reunited with their super. The system as a whole has $2.7 trillion in assets and it's recognized worldwide. It's really good. So it's not really for our members. It's not about the fees. It's about making sure that members get good outcomes in retirement and that they're not left with a situation. The fees that are currently charged, the proposed capital fees of 3%, is not an unreasonable measure. At the moment, we know that the average My Super fees have dropped from 113 basis points to 103 basis points in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I take your point, that's not unreasonable. But still, it's money that once out there you're not going to have in the future. How will you make it up?
Well, there's very competitive market in fees, and so there's always downward pressure on these fees. What we want to make sure is that people are getting value for those fees. In cases where people have made a choice that the fees may be higher because of the particular asset allocation or for the advice that they're getting. So it's not really a zero game here. It's about what is the right thing long term for the year period for a member. The funds are more likely to get things down as much as possible. So recognizing that a race to the lowest fees is not necessarily the best thing.
Mark Fay, who's Chief Executive of ASFA, the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, to Steve Chase.
Headlines every 15 minutes. This is ABC News.
Ambulance services in southeast Queensland have been on alert today as the region deals with some unseasonably hot conditions. In Brisbane, the temperature was expected to reach 36 degrees, Ipswich to 37. As possible, our reporter Brittany Klein has more from Brisbane's South Bank.
The Weather Bureau says that today we expect weather temperatures to be about 8 to 10 degrees above the monthly average. That's right across southeast Queensland, but we need to spare a thought for our friends in central west Queensland. They're getting pretty close to some record-breaking temperatures there. Yesterday at Birdsville, it was a scorch of 45 degrees, 41 at Bargaminda, and they've had little reprieve overnight, about 30 degrees before 8 a.m. this morning, 25 degrees in Brisbane. And like I said, we're down here at South Bank. We've been speaking with families, with their kids who are staying in the shade and keeping cool. There certainly is the warning from paramedics as well, who are looking out for the vulnerable in these heatwave conditions.
Particularly when it comes up so quickly, it's a real risk. And people we're most concerned about when there's a heat event are the older folks, young kids and people who are sick at home. So you need to just be careful and pay attention to what the day might unfold. And look, it's about making sure you stay inside, stay where it's cool. Wear some loose fitted clothing, keep your fluids up, don't avoid caffeinated and sweet drinks.
Some good advice there, but there is some good news that we're expecting a southerly change this afternoon into this evening.
Brittany Klein there with that update from Queensland, and as I was saying earlier in our weather update, you can expect some very hot conditions still across many parts of Queensland over the weekend as well as today. We'll of course keep you updated right across the day and the evening here on ABC News Radio. A new film about Queen, the British rock group, has just been released called Bohemian Rhapsody. Its star, as he was in real life, was the lead singer Freddie Mercury. One little-known fact is that Freddie Mercury grew up in Zanzibar off the coast of Tanzania. BBC's Victoria Mukunda has been in search of the roots of one of modern pop music's most iconic voices.
In 1946, in a stately-looking house that's now become a hotel in the middle of Stone Town, a boy was born. He will go on to become one of the world's most influential rock stars. Back then, he was named Farouk Bulsara, but the world knows him as Freddie Mercury. Yaqub Abdul Karim, who now manages the hotel Freddie Mercury's house used to be, is very proud of looking after a home that once belonged to one of the world's most recognized names.
Freddie Mercury was living in this house while he was a child, and especially when he was coming from London, he was staying with the parents. Parents were living here, and he was coming always here in holidays. After that, we have taken this building in 2000 as a temple house apartment, and we are running almost now for 15 years this Mercury apartment.
Dividing his time between three countries, England, India, where he went to school, and his birthplace, young Freddie will have walked the narrow streets of Stone Town, hanging out with childhood friends on the fine white sanded beaches just below the house he was born in. But things changed when, aged 17, Freddie and his family had to leave the island following the Zanzibar Revolution in 1964. But more than 50 years later, his star still shines bright, even among the younger generations who wouldn't have been born when he was alive.
Yeah, Freddie Mercury, he was born in Zanzibar. He was a popular musician from the group of Queen. We love his music, but we didn't get to see him because I'm young Zanzibarian and I didn't see him.
Very few people in Zanzibar will have had a chance to see Freddie Mercury and Queen perform. But one man, Zanzibari fashion designer Farouk Abdullah, struck gold.
I saw him perform once, I think it was in Wembley, and he was a showman. I mean, a really flamboyant showman. But the sad thing is, during his lifetime, he never once mentioned Zanzibar, that he came from Zanzibar. But then again, I don't think he was ashamed of it. I think he wanted to keep the mystery. So people ask questions, who's he, where is he from? I think it was deliberate. Of course, legacy is his music.
BBC's Victoria Wakunda with that report. It is time for an ABC News Radio update. Scott Wales with you this afternoon. It's just approaching 3:30 Eastern Daylight Time, 3 o'clock in South Australia, 2:30 for you in Queensland, 2 o'clock in the Territory, and 12:30 right now in the West.
ABC News.
Federal Labor says a failure to tell the Indigenous Affairs Minister about plans to appoint Tony Abbott as a special Indigenous envoy shows the government's instability. Scott Morrison appointed Mr Abbott to the role after overlooking him for a ministry position, but Indigenous Affairs Minister Nigel Scullion says he first heard this might happen through the media. Mr Shorten says the Prime Minister only made up the envoy role to keep disgruntled MPs on side.
He's got Mr Abbott as an envoy to get Aboriginal kids to go to school. We've got poor old Barnaby Joyce wandering around the bush as the envoy for drought. I mean, these jobs don't really exist in the Australian Constitution.
Documents suggesting refugee children on Nauru have severe mental health issues have been leaked to the ABC's background briefing. The documents contain spreadsheets with arrival data and mental health questionnaires filled out by the children. Dr Vernon Reynolds, a child psychologist with the Nauru camp's health contractor, says particular assessments indicated a cause for concern.
So those are extremely high scores on the SDQ, and they suggest that there is something extremely severe going on for that young person.
Dr. Vernon Reynolds. The Prime Minister has used today's National Drought Summit to announce significant extra funding for immediate and long-term drought assistance. National Regional Affairs reporter Anna Henderson has the details.
Scott Morrison told the group of political, community, agricultural and charity representatives that the $5 billion fund for future drought preparedness was putting money away for a non-rainy day. There's also more money for mental health support, charity groups and local government.
If the drought has reminded us of one thing, it is the indomitable spirit of Australians, and particularly rural and regional Australians.
The Bureau of Meteorology has warned the drought conditions will intensify in some areas over summer.
Anna Henderson with that report. The National's Federal Treasurer, Peter Schwartz, says media reports accusing him of gouging drought funding are misleading and vexatious. Fairfax newspapers report Mr Schwartz has been accused of gouging much of the $850,000 he received from the Goulburn Murray Water Authority, and that he spent years refusing to either return the money or use it for its intended purpose of saving water. But in a statement, Mr Schwartz says he's been, quote, stuffed around by the authority. He says he's seeking legal advice about the story. US police are currently responding to reports of a suspicious package at shops at the Time Warner Center in New York. It comes amid reports that suspected explosive devices mailed to high-profile US figures have been sent from Florida. Unnamed officials have told US media outlets investigators believe at least one package originated there, but the FBI is yet to confirm that. Ex-Vice President Joe Biden and the actor Robert De Niro have been the latest targets. The oldest son of murdered Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi has arrived in Washington from Saudi Arabia. Salah Khashoggi holds dual US-Saudi citizenship and has been under a travel ban. Saudi officials have meanwhile said the murder of Mr Khashoggi in Istanbul was premeditated, contradicting previous claims. Turkey alleges the Saudi Crown Prince ordered the killing, and the UN Special Rapporteur Agnes Kalamard says it doesn't look like a rogue operation.
These bear all the hallmark of an extrajudicial executions, and until I am proven otherwise, I will have to assume that this is the case. It will be up to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to demonstrate that it was not.
Police in Mexico have found the bodies of 19 people buried in mass graves in the western state of Jalisco. They're believed to be the victims of drug-related violence, and officials say they were killed about 4 months ago. Jalisco is one of Mexico's most dangerous states, with new criminal organisations battling for control of drug trafficking operations. A Sydney GP has lost an appeal against his conviction for murdering his wife with a lethal dose of insulin. Court reporter Jamel Wells.
64-year-old Brian Cricket serving a jail sentence of up to 27 years for murdering his wife Christine. On New Year's Eve in 2009, he injected her with fast-acting insulin and left her to die alone. The couple had been married for 19 years, and a judge found Brian Cricket wanted to claim his wife's life insurance and start a new life with his lover. In the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal, a 3-judge panel has dismissed his appeal. His non-parole period is 20 years.
Jamel Wells with that report. An ACT, a magistrate, has expressed frustration over the lack of a plan to manage a woman accused of an attack on a mental health nurse at the Canberra Hospital. Elizabeth Byrne reports.
The 30-year-old woman has today pleaded not guilty to attacking the nurse and damaging her glasses on 2 separate occasions. After an initial court appearance, she was returned to the hospital for a mental health assessment, but the unit refused to admit her, so she was taken to Canberra's jail. Today, she also applied for bail, saying she's now on medication and has stopped taking illicit drugs. But Magistrate Margaret Hunter said she wasn't prepared to grant bail without arrangements to keep the woman on track. The case will return next week.
Elizabeth Byrne with that report. Scientists say they've created a new antibiotic that could help in the fight against drug-resistant bacteria. The BBC's James Gallagher has more details.
Cafidricol uses a new, clever approach. It sticks to the mineral iron, which bacteria need to absorb in order to survive. Once cafidricol is smuggled inside the bacterial cell, it kills it. The antibiotic has been tested on nearly 450 people with either a kidney or urinary tract infection. Much larger trials are needed, but the results reported in the Lancet Infectious Diseases Journal show the new antibiotic appears to be as effective as current treatments.
The New South Wales government is defending a decision to allow pharmacists to give more vaccinations, saying there's no need for doctors to be the only providers. Angelique Liu reports.
The Australian Medical Association says vaccination should be a part of a holistic approach to health. But State President of the AMA, Ken Seng Lim, says doctors are not motivated by self-interest.
We hear that all the time, actually, which is always at a sort of pause, and we would fully encourage everyone to be fully vaccinated, but we'd also encourage everyone to be having all of their usual preventative health measures done as well.
State Health Minister Brad Hazzard says the policy is about making vaccinations more accessible.
This can work. We're still saying, of course, you should have a GP, but if you don't, then you'll have the option.
The changes come into place in January next year.
The Adelaide Botanic Gardens' stinkiest asset has bloomed overnight. The Titan Arum or corpse flower will be open for around 2 days and emits a smell that resembles rotting flesh. It's the fourth time a plant has bloomed. The species is endangered in its native Sumatra. The state government says Adelaide's collection of corpse flower seeds is among the most significant in the world. To finance, and the Aussie dollar has hit its lowest level in more than 2.5 years. A short time ago, the dollar was trading at 70.25 US cents. That's down about 3/4 of 1% in trade in the last couple of hours. US stock market futures are also pointing to further falls on Wall Street tonight, dampening sentiment around the region, and China's currency has also taken a hit. The Australian share market is going to close lower for the day. It's currently on 5,733. That's a loss of just under 0.5% in trade for this Friday. It has, of course, been a very bad week for share markets here and overseas. As I said, the dollar really struggling against the US. It's also falling against the British pence, and it's currently fetching 61.8 euro cents, 78.8 Japanese yen, and just 54.8 British pence as we go to air. Gold, $1,231 US an ounce right now. Tapis crude oil, $79.63 US a barrel. Let's get another update on the sport now with Brendan Arrow.
Great to be here, Scott. We'll start with some horse racing news. The superstar Mare Winks has the chance to create history tomorrow. She chases her fourth consecutive Cox Plate in Moonee Valley. The 2,040-metre race is Australia's premier weight for age contest. It is worth $5 million. Jockey Glenn Schofield will be aboard rival Avilius. He told ABC News Radio's Hoof on the Till, Winks deserves to be the clear favourite.
It's very hard to beat a horse that just runs past with that amount of ease that she has done against the opposition. I dare not say it's an inferior opposition. It has been said before, but look, she's beaten all in front of her so far, and she's a hard nut to crack.
The AFL women's competition will begin its third season in Geelong when the Cats make their league debut against the Magpies at Cardinia Park in early 2019. The league has launched its 2019 fixture, which will introduce a conference system for the first time and see the competition expanded from 8 teams to 10. As well as Geelong, a North Melbourne Tasmania side will make its league debut. AFLW head of football Nicole Livingston says it'll be an important year for the development of women's football.
Our focus in year 3 is to make sure that we do celebrate new milestones, and one of those new milestones are our 2 new clubs. So we're really pleased to have Geelong opening the season number 3 in 2019.
In domestic Sheffield Shield cricket, Marcus Harris has been piling on the runs at the MCG, with Victoria now holding a comfortable first innings lead over New South Wales. A short time ago, Harris was at 147 not out off 227 balls to help Victoria to 6 for 258. Having rolled the Blues yesterday for just 159 runs. Elsewhere, Western Australia was 4 for 128 on day 2 against Tasmania in Perth. The Tigers were bowled out for 226 on day 1, with Alex Doolan adding another half-century to the century he scored in Brisbane last week. But he says despite his good form, he isn't expecting a test record for Australia's series against India.
I've had my go, I didn't grab it, so yeah, for me now it's all about playing for Tassie and contributing there and winning titles.
Another player searching for form and runs is the West Australian batsman Shaun Marsh. After a disappointing series against Pakistan in the UAE, he's now at the crease and he's 46 not out of 102 balls. And the other match being played today, South Australia a short time ago 2 for 214 as they chase Queensland's total of 231. Tom Cooper is 103 not out of just 153 balls. His century has included 13 boundaries and 2 sixes. In A-League soccer, the Newcastle Jets will be hoping for a stronger second-up effort as they travel to the City of Churches to take on Adelaide United. The Jets lost its opening round match to Wellington 2-1, while the Reds played out a 1-1 draw with Sydney FC. Goals are expected tonight as the Jets have failed to keep Adelaide United scoreless in 7 consecutive games. Their last clean sheet came against them in December of 2015. News Radio listeners will be able to tune in to coverage of that match from just after 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Meanwhile, Sydney FC coach Steve Corica is confident his side can pull off a win against their reinvigorated rivals, the Western Sydney Wanderers, tomorrow night. The Sydney Cricket Ground will host the derby, which will be the first soccer game to be played at the Oval Ground in over 30 years. Corica says the Wanderers are a stronger side this year under the coaching of former German and Liverpool footballer Marcus Babbel.
He's brought in some good players, and I watched them last week against Perth. They were better in the second half, so we know them pretty well. We've looked at the new players coming in, and we mainly want to concentrate on ourselves and how we want to play.
In W-League soccer, Melbourne City goalkeeper Lydia Williams says a number of players are already feeling a bit burnt out even before the season began. Williams is one of a number of footballers who also play in the United States, where the season runs from March until September. She says the fatigue is an issue that has also concerned Matilda's coach Alan Stargic, especially as Australia prepares for a World Cup.
You know, a lot of us have had, no real rest and have gone on periods of a couple of years now with no real break and gone back to back. And obviously he's, a little bit worried. We've, voiced our concerns before. So he's obviously worried just to, our World Cup coming up and qualifiers and Olympics. So really right now there's no opportunity for a break.
And lastly, in some motorsport news, the Spaniards Marc Marquez and Dani Pedrosa have both crashed out during the first practice sessions in the Australian MotoGP at Phillip Island. It was their fellow countryman Maverick Viñales who set the fastest time. The Yamaha rider clocked a 1 minute 29.952 lap. Australian Jack Miller was the second fastest. Scott, I'll have more sports news in the next half an hour.
Brendan, thank you. Time for another check on the weather temperatures around Australia as we go to air this Friday afternoon. But in fact, before we do that, let's actually check in on what's happening on the roads with, of course, James Engelman, who is with the Australian Traffic Network.
Thank you. In Brisbane, first a breakdown on the M1 to the Gateway merge at 8 Mile Plains, another one on the Captain Cook Bridge in the city, and a smash in Woodridge Compton Road and Kingston Road. In Sydney, we've got a smash Barrenjoey Road, Beaconsfield Street in Newport, Haberfield, a smash there, City West Link Road at Timbrill Drive as well, and one at Penrith northbound Castlereagh Road at Corrine Avenue. Melbourne accident, Swanston Street, Parkville, Derrimut Road, Tarnita, Herring Road, Surrey Hills and the Maroondah Highway. In Adelaide accidents, Grange Road, Fenton Road, Flinders Park at Richmond Road, Railway Terrace, Keswick, and in Perth, a smash there in Craigie on Whitford Avenue at the Mitchell Freeway. I'm James Engelman, that's the latest national traffic.
Now to those temperatures as we go to air for you. Brisbane 31 degrees right now, 22 currently in Sydney this afternoon, 25 for Canberra, 17 right now in Melbourne, 16 degrees in Hobart. In Adelaide, you are experiencing 23 degrees this afternoon, 26 currently in Perth, 32 degrees in Darwin. ABC News Radio at 3:45 Eastern Daylight Time, 3:15 in South Australia. It is 2:45 in Queensland, 2:15 in the Northern Territory, and 1:45 right now in the West.
ABC News headlines.
US police are currently responding to reports of a suspicious package at shops at the Time Warner Centre in New York. That comes amid reports that suspected explosive devices mailed to high-profile US figures may have been sent from Florida. The federal opposition says a failure to tell the Indigenous Affairs Minister about plans to appoint Tony Abbott as a special Indigenous envoy shows the government's instability. The Indigenous Affairs Minister, Nigel Scullion, has acknowledged he first heard this might happen through the media. Well, it's been almost 8 months since the poisoning of the former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia in the southwest of England. Now, there's increasing evidence that Mr. Skripal had been travelling extensively across Europe, providing information to Western intelligence agencies. The BBC's Richard Galpin has this report.
Sergei Skripal, a colonel in Russia's military intelligence agency, the GRU, who'd betrayed his country, was brought to Britain in 2010 in a spy swap. So why were he and his daughter attacked 8 years later? Perhaps part of the reason lies in the Czech capital, Prague. This the first place where it's revealed he'd been actively assisting European and other Western intelligence agencies. Sources here telling me the Czech secret services were in a battle with Russian spies operating in the country, claiming they were trying to subvert the Czech government.
Means things for life.
So intelligence experts say the insights Mr. Skripal provided into the workings of Russian military intelligence were important.
Given the track record of Mr. Skripal, I could imagine that he would be very valuable. I'm not aware whether there would be any more, let's say, interesting defectors.